Technology isn't the enemy, it is our ally, but only if we adopt a new model that puts people before profit. I realize that we seem far from that model, but I have seen it in action and it is a beautiful thing, so I'm not willing to give up yet. Hope is the last thing to die. Justin Shane. Hello, my name is Paulina, and I have an important topic for you today: the digital divide. The ability to access computers and the internet has become increasingly important to completely immerse in economics, politics, and social aspects of not just America, but of the entire world. However, not everyone has access to this technology. According to Magic, the idea of the digital divide refers to the growing gap between the underprivileged members of society, especially the poor, rural, elderly, and handicapped portion of the population who do not have access to computers or the internet, and the wealthy, middle class, and young citizens living in urban and suburban areas who have access. Even though the number of people who have access to the internet is increasing, there are still many places who are way behind this process. The gap is widening along already strained economical and racial lines. For example, according to INEGI, in Mexico the number of people with access to internet increased from the year 2000, with only 7.1 million people with access to internet, to the year 2015, with 47 million internet users, which is 40.4% of the population. But if we compare this with South Korea, in a study made by OECD in 2012, 97.3% of the population had access to internet. This means that Mexico still has a long way to go. From computer households, which are 12 million, 16% reported not having internet connection. Of these, 2 out of 3 households reported lack of economic resources as the main constraint to have network connection. This serves as an example of why the digital divide grows. There are 3 main factors attributing to the digital divide. One of them is the education. Widening levels of education seem to magnify the digital divide. Households with higher levels of education are increasingly more likely to use computers and the internet. It has been observed that those with college degrees or higher are 10 times more likely to have internet access at work than those with only a high school education. According to INEGI census, 74% of the people who don't use internet has a level of education of just primary school. This proves that a low level of education also attributes to increasing the gap. The second factor is income, which is not surprising that it is a direct correlation to education. The levels of household income also play a significant role in the widening gap. A study made by NTIA observed that households earning incomes over $70,000 a year are 20 times more likely to have a home internet access than those at lowest income levels, and 10 times more likely to have a computer if living in city or suburban area than in rural area. The third one is race. At the same time, the digital divide continues to widen along specific racial lines. According to Fairline, in the U.S., among Latino groups, Mexicans have the lowest home computer and internet access, followed by Central and South Americans who have the next lowest rates. With the technology continually advancing, the issue of the digital divide cannot be ignored.
Hi guys, I'm Kenya. As we all know, technology is continually advancing, so the issue of the digital divide cannot be ignored. In our society, where the distribution of health is already heavily unbalanced, access to computers and the internet is unbalancing the situation even more. Those with computers and access to internet are becoming even richer through the power of information, while those without them are becoming even poorer in comparison. According to William Kenner, the chair of the FCC, in a society where increasingly we are defined by access to information and what we earn is what we learn, if you don't have access to technology, you are going to be left in the digital dark ages. That's what the digital divide is all about. The digital divide will not close unless there is an initiative to seal the gap. With socio-economic divisions already present in today's society, the digital divide is compounding the effects. It is not just the cost of computers that results in the digital divide, but also the presence of widespread literacy among overlooked populations. 1 out of 4 adults in the USA is illiterate or has limited literacy skill. Technological literacy cannot be promoted if basic literacy skills are lacking. Rectifying the digital divide, according to President Bill Clinton, is the greatest opportunity the US has ever had to lift its people out of poverty and ignorance. So, what needs to happen? What needs to be done? The digital divide as a whole remains an enormous and complicated issue, heavily interwoven with the issues of race, education, and poverty. The obstacle, however, is by no means insurmountable if broken down into specific tasks that must be accomplished. Aside from the obvious financial barriers, the following will narrow the gap. First, as the use of computers and the internet increases, so does the necessity for access. In the public sector, policymakers and community members must recognize the importance of such resources and take measures to ensure access for all. While increased competition among PC manufacturers and internet service providers has substantially reduced the cost associated with owning a computer and maintaining a home connection, for many households the cost remains prohibitive. So, the government should subsidize internet access to low-income households. At the same time, the private sector must commit to providing equal service and networks to rural and underserved communities so that all individuals can participate. Second, the community access centers, the CACs, are critical resources for those without access to computers and the internet at school or work. Such programs should continue to receive funding in order to expand and strengthen. According to data collected in 1998, minorities, individuals earning lower incomes, individuals with lower educations, and the unemployed, the exact groups affected for most by the digital divide, are the primary users of CACs. In fact, those using CACs are also using the internet more often than other groups to find jobs or for educational purposes. So, community access centers, therefore, are clearly worthwhile investments. First, computers and other technologies alone are not enough. Communities and schools must train and preserve additional and more qualified staff alongside new technologies to promote the best application of resources. In addition to understanding the new technologies, the staff must be able to teach others. And last but not least, much of society needs to change its attitude concerning technology. Rather than perceiving computers and the internet as a superfluous luxury, the public should view them as crucial necessities. The public must come to realize the incredible power of technologies and embrace them as tools for their future and the future of their children.
given the wide scope of the still expanding digital divide, help of any kind truly makes positive impact. Fortunately, the government, non-profit groups, and private foundations have started programs aimed at narrowing the gap. While the following list of programs and sites by no means cover all the programs in existence, it provides a mixed sampling of the types of initiatives currently underway. First of all, the government. The government is supporting a lot of schools and libraries. They help enable schools, libraries, and rural health care providers that they can afford. They do this with the network wiring and access telecommunication and internet service. This is known as the E-rate program. It requires telecommunication companies that will provide services to those eligible at rates discounted from 20 to 90%. The highest priority and discounts are given to those with the most economically or geographically disadvantaged schools and libraries, based on the household and incomes of students and families. Then it comes the Community Technology Center program. This one promotes the development of programs that focus on increasing and demonstrating the value of technology in urban and rural areas and economically distressed communities. Some of the private corporates that support technology is the A&T Learning Network. This program offers free online resources to help families, schools, and communities to learn how to use the technology efficiently to enhance teaching and learning. And what we can all call a virtual academy that offers an array for online courses. Well, it works along with the GetNet Wise that provides a web-based resource for parents to safely manage children access to content. Then it comes the Microsoft Private Corporate. Microsoft, in partnership with Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, will donate an estimated of $20 million in software to create an access to technology at public libraries that serve low-income communities. Along with the Working Connections, this 5-year, $30 million grant program supports the development and enhancement of information technology training for underserved populations through the Nation Community College system. Last but not least, the nonprofit foundations come with a Power Up. Power Up is comprised of more than a dozen nonprofit organizations, major corporations, and federal agencies that have joined together to launch a new and major multi-million-dollar initiative to combat the digital divide, based in schools and community centers around the country. Power Up will provide access to technology and guidance on how to use it. And last but not least, the nonprofit organizations have also helped in the City Skills. City Skills is an online community focused on bridging the gap between urban communities and technology employers by expanding technology education and empowering urban residents with real career-building opportunities. This site also offers fundraising tools related to tech training, community forums with bulletin boards, and classified listings, and relevant research news.
Pam, and you? What do you think are the ethical questions on this issue?
Well, as good as digital divide can sound, there are some ethical issues and some negative sides about it. One of it can be the digital exclusion, which can broadly be described as a lack of participation by some groups in services or activities which are provided online. As well as another similar aspect is social marginalization, broadly understood to reflect the fact that non-users may be able to interact with their social networks in the same way as web-using groups. There are, of course, different speeds of adaptation. These concerns reflect the fact that although data might suggest more people are coming online and successfully using tools, this may be at a slower rate than other people are adopting yet newer technologies. And of course, the understanding the digital divide in a global context. In particular, that some countries may be digitally excluded and that acts of wealthier countries may serve to create larger digital divides within other countries. For example, via the legislation they pass. So, as good as it can all sound, as good as it can be in many aspects of education, there's always the social part that it affects kids and everyone who use the digital devices, and not everyone is able to have this priority and this benefit from all this new technology that is being created.
How does this topic affect different communities? Look, the technological era is quite exciting for everyone, indeed. But the new technologies impacts the communities in many different ways, in positive and in negative ways. For those who have trouble-free access to the new technologies and to the internet, they don't have any problems. They are getting more and more richer through the power of information. But on the other hand, the lack of information from those that don't have any kind or less opportunities to get into this, it represents a disadvantage that can even influence their lives and their future. And that's one of the big problems, for example, that Latinos and Africans communities, as well as undeveloped countries, already have. If they would have more access and training to the new technologies, they could find jobs. They could learn so many things that can be so useful in their educations. Besides that, if they don't have the technology that the rest of the world have, they will not know how to communicate using social networking. And what about those persons with impairment? Persons having sight, hearing, and touch impairment and do not have access to the digital devices and the internet at all. All those persons, as William Kenner, the chair of the FCZ, said, in a society where increasingly we are defined by access to information and what we earn is what we learn, if you don't have access to technology, you are going to be left in the digital dark ages. It's just like that. In order to close the digital divide, in order to end this inequity, I think it is quite important to work on such principal issues. I would call them, for example, the 3 E issues. The first one, equality. Everyone must have access to the internet. The second one, education. Everyone must be trained in order to know how to work with these technologies and in order to develop its skills. And the third one, economy. Prices must still get down to facilitate those who have lower incomes to own a computer and to facilitate them to give it maintenance when it's needed. So, as we can see, a lot it needs to be done yet.